Greetings and salutations, my lovely little nomads and strangers everywhere. Why did I leave out party people? Well, I'm trying to just keep this whole intro simple for the penultimate episode for the first season of Merlin. Now, I've been doing this review series off and on for a while now, and it's been helping me with noticing a lot more of reviewer tools that I really have been needing for a long time now. The series itself is glorious, glamorous, it has a lot of good themes with it has a lot of good story with it, and I'm really looking forward to the finale piece of what we're going to do for the finale episode, even though it's not going to be anything that crazy, but I'm definitely looking forward to ending off the first season before we just take a small break before we get into season 2. With that being said, though, I want to take the time out right now to just say thank you to all of you guys that have been watching these review series as of right now. Because there's been some people that have never watched the series and then had this in their watch later feed to watch certain episodes, like Brit Does Whatever. Hi, Brit. And the most biggest support system I've ever had for this whole thing was my sisters of Jasmine and my sister Jen. Hi, Jazz and Jen. So, yes, I am looking forward to doing this penultimate episode as well as the final episode in a few weeks. So, I guess we're just going to dive into me talking about To Kill the King. Roll the intro. What is going on, little nomads, party people, and strangers everywhere, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Merlin's first season of reviews. Are you excited? Cause I know I am. Cause today's episode is actually one of my top 4, like I said, 4 favorite Merlin episodes from its first season. Hello. It goes into A Remedy to Cure All Ills, Excalibur, this as number 3, and I think number 4 is, let me double check real quick. I believe it's a tie between The Mark of Nimue and The Moment of Truth. So let's get started, shall we? The episode itself begins in an unexpected way. It begins with Gwen's dad of Tom coming forth to give her a new shiny button to go with her new shiny dress. Oh heavens, oh lordy, hold my pearls. Gonna turn that up to 11. But Gwen is like, Dad, how are we getting all this money? But he's like, we're on the up and up, my daughter. Don't worry about it. I got us for a long time now. So, how is he getting all this money, though, for all of us that don't know what's going on? He is striking a bargain with a known sorcerer, although we don't know he's known until a few seconds in, of Torin, a person that wants to take down Uther, of course! Why else would there be a magic user in Merlin besides Merlin and Gaius that would want to do anything else? So, the reason he was paying Tom was he wanted to test out a plot device MacGuffin thing to transform lead into gold, which mysteriously wakes Merlin up. I don't know why, because alchemy shouldn't involve magic. I mean, magic and alchemy are two separate things. But whatever. So, following that, we then have a giant plot hole event happening. What is this plot hole event happening? Well, after the transmutation of lead into gold using both magic and recomposition of transmutation through scientific means, Tom is just given the gold with no real notion of finding out what's going on and everything. Sorry, some really awesome song is playing. And as soon as they're just making the deal of like, you tell no one because this is your payment, all of a sudden Arthur and the guards of Camelot come in and you're just like, how did you know this deal was going down? Were you stalking? Were you trailing Torin? What were you doing? There was no real no motive or telling anyone how this happened. Just like the deal is made, and then pooh, cops. What the? So the big plot hole of this episode so far is how did they know that this deal was going down? Anywho, Torin escapes from this weird plot hole event, and because they see that Tom got paid in a ball of gold, Tom is then arrested for treason. And then we have the opening sequence. Dang it, Big Daddy Kane, why you gotta make such good music? Anywho, following that scene, we then have Morgana, Arthur, and Uther in a scene together. That hasn't happened in a while. So what's going on in this scene right here? Well, kind of simple. Morgana is trying to protest Uther's whole insane rule yet again. Why? Because Uther is an insane man. He literally oozes psychopath. Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. The Joker from all of Batman's whole media. The Elusive Man from Mass Effects 2 and 3. And I believe Wily, Dr. Wowie from all the Mega Man games are looking at Uther like he needs help. These 4 individuals I just listed off are looking at Uther like he needs help. Think of that really, really closely. But anyway, while that scene is going on, let me just backtrack a little to going back into Merlin. How is he dealing with how the episode started out? Well, he's jolted awake because apparently he couldn't sleep as soon as alchemy and magic was committed. Which I can understand. That abomination of mixed match things should never happen. So, he doesn't know what's going on, but the audience does. And then I'm going to go back into the whole scene with the Royals. Arthur is trying to do things on a sensible manner to just discern what's going on, while Morgana is doing stuff on a more emotional strain. But needless to say, though, Uther is not budging, because Gwen, throughout this entire episode, will be saddened, she will be heartbroken, she will be just upset over all of this. So I'm ignoring every scene with Gwen, because she's just one of the major casualties that I cannot really stress that well, because I'm not really someone that can talk that well about children of characters in shows anymore because of my own scenario where I'm always imagining what would happen if I was in a situation like this. So, because of the stuff that's been going on with Tom where he just happens to be paid and just was doing some experimental stuff for Torin, he's imprisoned, and Gwen is just trying to figure out why he's done this when she already has all that she wants. And sure enough, he admits that he screwed up, but as soon as Gwen gives off the information that she just heard from her dad, all Gaius and Merlin do is deduce that it is of alchemy. But I know alchemy when I see it. That was not alchemy. That was pure magic. Pure and simple. Because if it was something of alchemy, there would be an equivalent exchange through a transmutation of the entire notion. That's not something from anime. That's actual scientific fact that has been used. To make something of one compost, it has to be something of equal mass and configuration of the atoms and molecules to form into said substance. Turning lead into gold could be functional if said components within the materials make it so. It wouldn't be pure gold, sure, but it would be authentic enough gold. So, I don't know. But following this notion, moving the alchemy aside, what else could be possibly making the plot go even crazier? Well, Morgana just trying to find Gwen because Gwen is a sad sack over the fact that her dad's in jail, obviously, so she's trying to be alone. Morgana finds the plot device MacGuffin thing in Tom's space, which awakens Merlin because only people with high magical abilities seem to wake up Merlin in the middle of the night this episode. Suspicious, isn't it? Anywho, following that notion though, Morgana visits Gwen, and Gwen as she's sleeping in Merlin's house. They weren't sleeping together, if that's what y'all are implying. And as soon as she's just going over all the details with Merlin, and at least Merlin's trying to say there's at least a little hope that he'll be free, but Morgana's just like, there is no hope. So she visits Tom in his cell, and after finding a key in an earlier scene, she gives the keys to his cell to Tom, and then leaves, just giving him that decision of, should I leave this prison and not wait trial that is due process even during medieval period, or should I break out and try my best? Well, let's move ahead. Let's move ahead to just talk about certain other elements that are happening in this episode. You know how I always joke about how Uther is an insane individual that just breathes psychopath? Yeah, that's not really a joking matter in this episode, because he literally sets out to just say to anyone that gave Torin a bed to sleep in and food, bring them to me to be executed. So without even knowing that the person is a magician of any sort, and just giving him a bed to sleep in and food, and probably being tortured into not revealing said things, whether or not they had a choice in the matter, or any other things like that that could be real life scenarios. You're gonna kill off all the people for at least acting human enough to say, you seem like you need somewhere to sleep and to eat. Let me welcome you into our home. That's a huge offense for you. Do you hear yourself when you make these laws? Do you honestly hear yourself, Uther, when you're just like, I am the great king of Camelot. I can make sure everything goes my way. You there with the baby. Stop feeding it with your nipple milk. You ought to be executed for being a witch, for making such milk tasty in your bosom. Like, do you honestly hear yourself when you speak? Or do you just wake up one day and just like, who should I fuck up today because they did something right that I never did? Just a little bit of that going on throughout this entire episode over all that he says and does. So, after doing all that stuff, let's go check in on Tom. What's Tom doing in his prison cell? Is he waiting like a good boy for his trial to prove his innocence, go back to his daughter, and then just hope to have his position as one of the best blacksmiths in the world happen on the spot? Nope. He instead has the brilliant idea to go with Morgana's plan to use the key to go out of his cell and make a run for it. So, when Uther finds out, do you think he's gonna be understanding and be like, ha ha, well, I kinda deserve this. Well, let's just capture him and give him a fair trial in the morning? Of course not. He decides to set out and say, let's just hunt down that motherfucker and kill him on the spot. The trial's a formality. Arthur, make sure they kill him. But Arthur doesn't want to do that, because throughout the entire episode, and I'm going to skip over Arthur's involvement throughout the entirety of this one episode. Everything that Arthur is doing in this show throughout this one episode is just being the anti-Uther, being logical, being compassionate, looking out for those well-being, and even reaching out for people right on the spot when there's a tragedy. He's doing all the things a real king does. He's exhibiting the traits that aren't of a tyrant like his father, but as an actual individual with a compassionate heart, being a ruler. That's why I'm skipping over Gwen and Arthur, because Gwen is a victim throughout this entire episode, and I don't like talking about victims throughout families because of my own thing of how I would see things going down in my own family. And I'm skipping over Arthur because he doesn't really do anything except for what I just said. So, what else could happen for Tom except for, of course, they kill Tom. A kingdom run by a gray-haired, blue-eyed white guy kills a wrongfully imprisoned brown minority character over wrongful imprisonment, just trying to make sure he sees his child again because of said wrongful imprisonment, and just hopes that it all goes under the rug. I'm having Marvel Civil War flashbacks. And I don't mean the movie, I mean the comics. I'm having those kind of flashbacks. And that's not a good thing. So, after the death of Tom, we then have Gwen sobbing uncontrollably and going into a depression spiral that I don't think the showrunners could actually capture without any sort of really explicit material about how depression works. So, how do most of the other characters handle this news? Well, we'll never really know how a majority of the main cast handles it, because Morgana literally just jumps down Uther's throat and points out some really realistic things that are a lot of fans' complaints with Uther's character. He's not doing anything that is a just or wise king. He's doing stuff of a paranoid lunatic that just wants to do things because he's power hungry. Someone that will be a ruler doesn't do stuff to just block out his enemies like Uther does, because, as she also pointed out, the more he tries to eliminate one enemy at a time, he creates more enemies with his brazen nature of never thinking things through. He does all of these feats for himself, sure, to be somewhat competent in at least holding the sword and being a defender, but he doesn't do anything smart with his power. He does stuff on a whim. Just be like, it is my kingdom, it is my rule, and you will follow this rule to the T. So, after hearing all this real-life stuff that he should really think through, does Uther honestly take this stuff to heart, think about his things, and then makes sure that his character changes throughout the entirety of the series to make him grow as an individual to no longer be a tyrant? Or does he do the most illogical thing by locking up Morgana in a dungeon and then making her suffer because he didn't want to listen to her being realistic about him being a power-hungry tyrant sociopath that has no real way of communing with his people anymore and is just being so power-hungry over everything that he ends up driving his whole entire country into madness and then actually falling towards a lower depths for himself than he'll ever really accomplish. If you guys said the first thing, you guys have no idea how this show works. He does the second thing. So, after all that is said and done with Morgana in the dungeon for all of this, what are all the other characters doing? Well, Gwen is, well, we already established I'm not touching Gwen with a 500-foot pole, but she is used as another pipe lay, where Torin is threatening her to bring him his MacGuffin item in 2 days to the Darkling Woods, whatever the hell those are, and she doesn't know what's going on, most because Gwen doesn't know anything magical in the show. I'm not even joking. Still though, once that is set in stone, we then have to find out that the MacGuffin item is something called the Mage Stone from a scene between Gaius and Merlin going through the Big Book of Magic. It's still a MacGuffin item because it's allowing someone to use the title of alchemy to become a mage of sorts. So it's still a MacGuffin item for someone that has no real prowess of their craft whatsoever. And it's just used for the plot's relevance because plot needs something to go with that plot. So anyway, after the whole thing with Torin and finding out about the stone, Morgana is set free from the dungeon because of Arthur being, like I said earlier, the anti-Uther. So Morgana is then set into her room where she gets the spiel from Gwen about what happened to her the previous night before. At least I think so. I don't know. Like I said, there is no time scale in Arthur, in Merlin, so we have no idea what the hell time frame it is. It could have been a week ago for all we know. Or it could have been like 2 days prior. I don't know. So, as soon as Morgana hears that he wants his MacGuffin item, she grabs the MacGuffin item late at night, which awakens Merlin. And as soon as she takes the MacGuffin item to Torin, with Merlin tailing her in the shadows, hiding behind some trees where no one else can find him. Did he get ninja lessons from Genji from Overwatch or something? Morgana decides to do the one thing that she'll be best known for throughout the entire series. Striking a bargain with said antagonist to then plot to kill Uther. Now, I know this might sound like a spoiler, but honestly it's not. Morgana has always been viewed as a villain throughout Arthurian lore, and it's kind of best to see why, since she's very villainesque and has kind of been built up to it in a way that you'll see as soon as the series continues. So, following that notion, I'm going to shut off this music because I feel like I'm about to pop into a choreography video in a second. So, following this whole notion right here, we then have the time and place where Merlin overhears something where he can either prevent something or make it happen where he does nothing. Why am I covering this? For one simple reason. As soon as it's painfully clear to Merlin about what the choice is, he then descends to talk to John Hurt Dragon, where John Hurt Dragon is telling him that he should do nothing and allow Uther to be killed so that the reign of Arthur can begin and that magic can be restored to Ambien. Now, I am not a fan of the plot element where you have to choose whether someone lives or dies, because I've lived that lifestyle. It's not a fun lifestyle. It is something that tears people to shreds. You'll have families in despair. You'll have people that you love being saddened if it happens to them and real close life individuals. It's a very sad thing to endure. However, the moment that this is introduced in this show, it's actually very poignant and very well done and executed. Cause, let's face it, if Uther were to die now, no one would complain. We would have a shit ton of problems cause Arthur hasn't learned a lot of lessons and hasn't become the king that Camelot deserves yet. But no one would complain, cause Uther is a dick. Uther is a shit stick. Uther's a psychopath that eats babies, for all I know. Uther is a fucking moron. But here is the countermeasure of it. Before we get to the good events, you have to endure suffering to make sure that what you endure has all of its fruits bared so that you have all of your rewards laid out in front of you. And the reward for putting up with Uther is the solemn reward of getting Arthur as king. To do that, you have to go through all the bullshit in Season 2, the events in Season 3, and the crap that happens in Season 4 to have what is just. Is Uther going to remain king? No. He's going to be stepping down at some point in time where he will learn how to shut the fuck up, not do anything else with his life, and let Arthur be king. But should it be now is the question. And throughout the entire episode between him asking Gaius and Gwen, two people that really know what they would talk about involving Uther's whole judgment, we get our answer. But before that, though, we have to go through Morgana's plan of luring Uther to be killed. Supposedly. Her plan is simple. She wants to lure Uther out to her father's grave to be executed. First, by giving him the guilt trip of first using Gwen's tragedy as an excuse to say that he is still letting it happen, which is a very shallow thing to do for someone that you care so deeply about as a friend. And doing that to sow the seeds of despair and misery and second thought sort of process within Uther, who clearly tries to act like he's upset, but he seems like he's hiding something, just like he's hiding how Arthur was really born. Following that notion, we then also have to go into Uther taking the bait, and then the night before, her converging with Thorin and his men to surround him at the gravesite to then attack him. Just for saying that he'll agree to go and see Morgana's dad's grave. I keep on using dad because there is a plot relevant thing that happens later on in the series that I cannot stress enough that makes this whole conversation lackluster and quite frankly pointless. Needless to say, though, as soon as they're riding out to the gravesite to try and kill Uther, Merlin gets his answer from Gwen, who honestly should have gotten the voice on this judgment thing more so than any other character. She points out that Uther's death would mean nothing because she felt nothing, but to kill him would make her no better than him, a monster. And for Arthur to at least let him die in a savagely brutal way would make him just as horrible and guilty. So he decides to load up by grabbing one of his trophies from a previous episode of the Gates of Avalon. One of the staffs used by one of the old magic users that were trying to become immortal again. He decides to ride out to try and intercept the party from killing Uther while he's with Morgana, trying to have a moment. And when they're having this fake me out moment, Morgana has a change of heart in the middle of nowhere. Why? Who knows and who cares? We've had a glimpse of Morgana being evil and cunning and quite frankly one of the biggest foes in the series. I wish I was kidding, but that's not really a spoiler because everyone on the internet has already spoiled that Morgana's a villain in the making and then becomes a villain. It's kind of weird, but not that weird. Still, through Morgana's change of heart after I keep getting the names mixed up. After Merlin gets knocked aside because Thorin uses his MacGuffin stone to reflect his spell back onto him, Uther kills Thorin, and then we wrap up the whole episode with Gaius saying that he heard all the events and just tries to confirm that Merlin was indeed in the background, just being modest about saving Uther the trouble of having to fight 5 men instead of 1. And then we close it on that cheesy scene. So my thoughts in general about to kill the king. Yeah, To Kill the King. Honestly, I make it my number 3 favorite episode of all time because it's that incredible. The moment you actually enter in an episode where the main character has the point in place to make a certain life-changing event happen way before its time is really refreshing to see in a narrative, even if the choice of how to do it is kind of stupid. The whole should someone die or not thing is something I do not approve of and something I really hate writers from doing. I even hate it myself when I have to write that in certain stories that I make. But I can understand why, because with Uther alive, you cannot have the reign of Arthur in its purest sense. And I mean like purely dead, like his afterlife, like in the afterlife he's moved on. He has no real mortal coils to the Earth's surface. Kind of like Increased Mathers not being on the plane of existence that would bother Cotton Mather in Salem. But the contrast of how this episode plays out kind of foreshadows a lot more the series than it gave itself credit for. It played out into a whole event of scenes like Merlin being the defender of Camelot from scene by scene basis without anyone really knowing it on a grander scale than anyone could ever really hope for. Seeing Arthur becoming the true ruler of Camelot through the eyes of certain characters in subtle hints that you would never really notice until your second play through it. Morgana's whole rebel and revolutionary streak coming out to the forefront in a way that you would find kind of surprising during your first watch through, sure. But when you're watching it for like your second or third run through, you see that was actually the nugget to sow in a really dark seed for something to grow into a venomous flower throughout later episodes. And Gwen being a victim, that actually eluded nothing. That was just sad. Killing off Tom was kind of fucked up, but I think that's a lot. I think it's a lot better than how the Marvel Civil War thing handled the whole Thor killing off Goliath, and then Goliath being in a giant shroud covered in chains in a comic called Civil War, where it's a lot of American heroes, where he was killed by an Anglo-Saxon. That's very racist there, Marvel. Applause to you. But enough about that comparison. There's also the whole thing about alluding into why Uther's reign will never last. Uther being a tyrant will create an imbalance throughout the world that will lead to a revolution that will end up making him more broken and fall through the cracks even more so into a dark depression where he'll never stumble into becoming king again. That is something that is powerful to allude from just this one episode to something that will be a giant milestone for the series, and that is something that I find admirable about this episode. So do I recommend that you see this as your first episode? God, no. No. This episode is so heavy with foreshadowing notes that it's not even funny. Wait until you see a few episodes beforehand to then go into this episode, and then you'll be right on target. And now, I'm going to take a week off to prepare for the season finale episode, Le Morte de Arthur, where apparently it's the alluded death of Arthur and the return of my favorite sylph of Nimue. So then, peace and take care of my lovely little nomads out there. To all my party people out there, keep on grooving. To all my strangers out there, if you enjoy me, on a serious note, if you enjoy me and like what I do, you can hit that like button and also subscribe to become a nomad today, because I don't like just making stuff for myself. I like making stuff that will bring a smile to everyone's face. And if you enjoy how I do this and can find joy from it, I would appreciate it if you guys stuck around with me. And to all my magic users out there, remember, there's always a land of myth and a time of magic for you all, where all of destiny shall rest in your hands. Bye!